Awesome. Well, good morning again. Thank you for being here. In case you don't know what this is, you just stumble upon it. This is Ignite the Capital California. It's a legislative advocacy day event. Typically, before COVID, we used to travel to Sacramento, and we used to do this in person where we would visit different offices, different legislators, and advocate for all the different bills. Unfortunately, with COVID, we can't travel, but we're not going to let this pandemic silence our voice. We decided to take this virtually and to do this from our home or wherever you are.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited, y'all. So Assemblywoman Christina Garcia has probably been serving California's 58th Assembly District since 2012. Her previous work as a community organizer, teacher, civic activist, and now as a leader in the California State Legislature has allowed her to continue on her mission to empower and engage her constituents and her colleagues on three legislative priorities: women's issues, ethics and good government, and socioeconomic and environmental justice. Assemblywoman Garcia has taken on gender inequity by previously introducing AB 1516 and its successor, AB 9, which would repeal the state tax on feminine health products. And she also leads a movement to update the definition of rape in light of the Brock Turner verdict. When corruption and political scandals became more prevalent, she took action by introducing a wide-ranging ethics and transparency package of bills called the Political Conduct, Ethics, and Public Trust Act of 2014. She is also a dedicated mentor to young folks in her community, as exemplified through her launch of Young Legislators Program and Fellows in Government Program. Her dedication to environmental issues can be seen through her work on AB 617, which called for more resources and strict air standards to be implemented to protect disadvantaged communities, and also through her work on AB 1132, where she fought to stop emissions that pose public health risks to her community. Assemblywoman Garcia continues to show us how important it is for us to speak out on issues we care about and how change can be implemented when we elect passionate, intelligent, and hardworking women to office. I'm so excited to welcome her into the space and have her speak more on her background and the incredible work that she does.
Yeah, and actually perfect timing. Assembly member Christina Garcia is here. And also the most important thing is that she is self-proclaimed, and we agree, the Princess Queen, or no, period princess. There we go. I was like, what's the title? The period princess, who, she's been a fierce advocate for menstrual equity. And so this is, again, she's reintroducing a bill to champion for menstrual equity. And with that, we will pass it on to Assemblywoman Garcia.
Hi, good morning. How's everyone doing today? We're good. So I'm sorry, Jocelyn, I ran over here from the floor, so I haven't read my notes. What's the format really quickly?
Yeah, so your staffer wants to make sure that you're out in 15 minutes. I want to make sure that you're on time for your next event. So you do have 15 minutes. We'll just do 10 minutes of quick overview of the bill on, let me see, AB, how can I forget?
367, I got you.
Yes, AB 367, the Menstrual Equity for All Act, and then we'll open up the last 5 minutes for a Q&A.
Okay, so I'm probably going to talk about it for like 6 minutes, and then we'll have a little more time for Q&A. So I appreciate all the work that Ignite always does. I am not an alum of Ignite, but I'm a giant fan of the work they did. I actually didn't have many of these organizations, when I was in school, whether it's high school or college. And so the sisterhood is something I love, and I love seeing this now and try to support it. And so I wish I had the support that you guys have now. And so just thank you to everyone that makes this happen. I gave myself the title of the Tampon Queen a while back because I would have people calling me all kinds of names and making fun of me for talking about my period. And I introduced the first bill in the country to get rid of the tax on menstrual products. But in that process, I did it because I was angry. It's like, why am I being taxed for being born with the uterus? Like, that was basically like what it came down to. When I first got elected, I wanted to do that bill, and people were like, yeah, it's going to be too hard. Everyone's going to make fun of you. And so I waited a while, but finally introduced that first bill, and it's taken me years. We now have a tax exemption in the budget for menstrual products, but it's temporary, which means every time we have a budget negotiation, I need to fight for this. And so I continue to advocate to make that a permanent exemption. But in this process, I've learned a lot, right? I had high school girls come up to me one day and they're like, oh, you're the period, like you're the tampon lady. And I was like, yes, that's me. I was in Stockton for something else. And, you know, they were sharing their stories about how they miss school when they get their periods because they can't afford this stuff, or they buy like one at a time, or they use newspaper. One of them told me she used socks and newspaper because she couldn't miss school because she understood that that was her way out of poverty, right? This was here in California, like I was not in a third world country. And so I introduced AB 10 to make products for free in all educational settings. That included our universities. And they got, through negotiations, narrowed down to just low-income Title I schools, middle schools, and high schools, 50% of the bathrooms. And we purposely made it gender neutral, just half of the bathrooms, because the reality is that we have folks who menstruate who don't identify as women. And so people always ask that question, and that was on purpose. My goal is that this stuff is in all their bathrooms, just like toilet paper. And, you know, it's not about you being poor. It's about you like having an emergency, because our biology doesn't always listen to us, doesn't always go on a clock. And suddenly you're like, I got to stop everything I'm doing. And I have to stop being like the kick-ass productive woman I am, doing 20 things to go deal with this, right? And we deal with it with things like newspaper, not newspaper, toilet paper. We deal with it like asking someone for stuff. I was at Disneyland and I was having fun, but like I suddenly got my period by surprise. And like I went to 4 bathrooms. I went to a store. Turns out that Disneyland doesn't have menstrual products anywhere but in one store, and they didn't have any that day. Everything in Disneyland was broken that I went to. So I literally got so desperate. I just walked into the bathroom. I was like, who has a tampon? I need a tampon. That took me an hour, right? And at least I was having fun. But now imagine that you're trying to take a test, a final, and you have to deal with this suddenly. Or you're trying to, like, I was at the COP climate change negotiations and they didn't have anything anywhere. And we were in this little remote part of like Germany, and they're like, you need to get on a train to the next town 30 minutes away and then come back. I'm like, so if I'm in the world stage negotiating climate change, I have to stop everything I'm doing for an hour. So we've introduced AB 367 because I'm following in the footsteps of Scotland. And while it doesn't provide menstrual products everywhere, it does say that it's at right. And it does say that any public space must have them. So schools, universities, but also parks, government buildings, any public space, which is actually a ton. And I hope to do that, like other places start thinking about it and just putting it into their bathrooms. And so that's what AB 367 does. It's about ensuring that my biology doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do in society, you know, and access to those products. We already have to go to work when we have our periods, and some of us have cramps. Some of us have, endometriosis with it. That makes it really hard. And we're supposed to pretend everything's fine and be like just as functional. And so at a minimum, we should have access to these products. And so that's what AB 367 does. We are always looking for champions. The first thing that people are going to tell me is that this costs money and we can't afford it. In my mentality, this is absorbable. You already have folks going into the bathrooms to put in toilet paper and keep them clean. This doesn't take that much. You don't even need a dispenser. Really, a box is fine. And so I say, well, they're going to take it all. And I was like, if a woman decided to take them all, then she really needs them. So I'm going to be okay with it. Most of us realize that we walk in the restroom, we're going to take what we need and leave behind for somebody else. And if you need to take them all, there's a real reason for that. And I'm trying to be better. I shouldn't say woman. I should say, an individual. The last thing I'm going to say is I'm no longer the tampon queen. This process has been educational for me, right? And so I'm now the period princess, because when I talk about tampons, it makes it seem like I am advocating for everyone to use tampons, and that's the right thing for us. And I use tampons, but I realize we have choices out there, including cups, sponges, underwear now, pads. And so I decided to take the lessons. And actually, it was a young high school girl that came to talk to me about my use of the Tampon Queen title. And so I appreciated that she took that time to educate me. And so I changed my name to the Period Princess, in this process. In the same way, so I will say it's been mostly young individuals who have been educating me about, the bigger picture around this. And so I've expanded from being angry about being taxed for being born with the uterus to trying to be more inclusive in my menstrual equity discussion. I said a lot really quickly. I also talk fast when I'm excited. I'll take questions now.
Thank you. And do we have any questions in regards to whether it's for Assemblywoman Garcia or about AB 367?
I have a question, but it's more so for the Assemblywoman, if you don't mind if I ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so oftentimes the women I speak to want to run for office, but they feel like they're not qualified for the role or often doubt their abilities. How did you overcome doubts or reservations you had before launching your campaign and doing the amazing work that you do now? And what advice would you give to women struggling with imposter syndrome?
So I am really lucky that I grew up in the household that I did. I'm a proud Latina of immigrant Mexican parents. But I'm really lucky that there's certain norms that like were not followed in my household. And so in my household, we were given permission to, actually, it was expected of us to always try and take advantage of an opportunity, but we were given permission to fail. And it was never about being fully qualified and checking off the boxes. My mom would always tell me, ask their grown-ups for help. Like, so at school, go out and ask the grown-ups for help. And so that is something that I feel like, I encourage women to say, don't worry about whether or not you're qualified to serve or not. We're all qualified to serve. We serve just on experience. There's nothing else. And if you're a man, you're born and you think you're qualified. I'm like, instead, go ahead and take that inventory and think about your strengths. Think about the pieces you need to work on and surround yourself with individuals that complement those pieces you need to work on. But don't let that limit yourself out there. And so, it's something that I bring to my life regularly. When I decided to run, people asked me to run, and my hesitation was not whether or not I was qualified. My hesitation was like, oh, I'm going to be a public citizen now. And I like my privacy. I like my quality of life. I only work 4 days a week. I wasn't sure I had the patience to work with adults all day long. I like working with high school and college students. And so it was like that sacrifice, but it was also an opportunity to have a different type of leadership in my community that I had been advocating for. And then when I looked around, I was like, who do I help? And I was like, run. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, I could beat the odds. So I'm just going to do it. And my time has been about how do I develop leadership so that when those opportunities come, if someone doesn't want to run, they're like, you know what, I'm not going to run, but I can help this person run that has my same values and goals. But that wasn't there when I first had the opportunity. And so I decided to run really late. It was like the end of December. The election was June. I announced the first week of January. I broke my leg MLK weekend. I had a cast up my whole leg. So people were like, you're not going to win. No one took me seriously except for the community. I got outspent 7-1 and we won, and so I've always been thankful to that. I did not know what I was doing. This job was hard. I was lost. I was struggling. I hated my job. And I had to stop for a moment and be like, ask for help. And so I did. And so my third year in office, I finally asked for help and I sat down and I was like, help me figure this out. Because I hate my job and I don't want to be in a place where I hate my job. And I'm not a good boss if I hate my job. I'm not a good advocate. And so I had to go back to those basics. And I try to remind myself to go back to those basics all the time to ask for help. And I've been honest with the community and they've been very patient at letting me grow into my job.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's hard because women were taught to be perfectionists since we were little, since we were little girls. So thank you for that. And we have a few questions. So how can we help support AB 367? And did you run into any obstacles while trying to push for AB 367 this time around?
So I just introduced it. So I know the obstacles are going to be that it costs money. And so having to say like, let's get past that. And it costs more money for me not to be like the professional kick-ass woman that you need me to be, because I have to stop for an hour to go deal with an emergency anytime. So I would say that costs more money. And so I think that's my biggest obstacle. In the past, it's been dismissed like, this is dumb, this is not important. I've been called, part of why I gave myself my own title, and I was just like, I'm just gonna give myself a title because I was tired of hearing all the like nasty titles people were giving me. So, I was like, I'm just gonna own it, whatever. But the best way you can help is by asking your assembly member and your senator to become a co-author. It's by asking the chair of appropriations, and the chair of wherever this goes, we'll see next, to let it out, not to hold it up over cost or anything like that. That's going to be the number one concern: cost to the state, cost to the local government, cost to the Parks and Recs department. And so at the end of the day, we are responsive to a lot of noise on the internet. So if you guys are all making lots of noise, we're going to be paying attention. Like, we might not be talking to you, but trust me, everyone's following what you guys are saying and doing. But it's not just noise, right? You need to make sure you're tagging those chairs. You make sure your representatives are signing on. And then at some point, it's getting the governor on board, to also then sign this. That's later on in the process. But right now, I would say that cost is going to be what gets thrown in my face, and sharing your story of what the cost is when you're not a productive part of society, because we've all had that experience. We've all had that emergency, and telling those stories is how we legislate. We have to put a face on this. And it's like, we don't talk about our periods. We've been told never to talk about our periods. I was talking to my brother who's in his 50s and remarried now, and he has 3 daughters and an ex-wife and a new wife. And he's like, we never talked about periods in my house before. And now my new wife doesn't menstruate, so we never talk about it. I was like, that's really sad, because you had all these women around you and you never talked about this. But it's society, right? We're told to keep it to ourselves, and it's dirty and it's shameful. But we could go see like a movie and seeing people blown up and blood everywhere, and that's okay.
That's definitely that we definitely see that in the media. Well, with that, I promise your staffers that I'll get you out of here at 10:30. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Assemblywoman, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it in person this year, but I can't wait to see you again once this pandemic is over, and that we'll continue to, in the meantime, we'll continue to advocate for the bill virtually. So we'll be sending emails, phone banking, and also we'll be meeting with a few staffers after this. We're meeting with the staffer for Assemblymember Jose Medina, and since the bill is currently in higher education and education committees. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you again for spending your time with us, and we'll hopefully see you very soon.
Thank you. And you have up next my colleague, Ms. Gonzalez from San Diego, who's actually been a fierce advocate as well in this space. And so she's got a lot of power to truth to power to share with you guys also. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And before we pass it on to Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Angelica, would you mind just do a quick introduction of the Assemblywoman? Thank you.
Yes, of course. I'm actually so excited. I voted for her and she represents me. So this is such an amazing moment. All right, so Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez was elected to represent California's 80th Assembly District in 2013, and since has been using her platform to fight for her state's working and middle classes. Her peers' experience as a labor organizer, CEO and secretary-treasurer for the San Diego Imperial County's Labor Council, and the senior advisor to the California's Lieutenant Governor has helped her become one of California's most effective legislators. Through her time in the California State Legislature, she has introduced several bills, including AB 1522, which made California the first state in the nation to guarantee earned sick days for every single private sector worker, regardless of employer size or sector. She has paved the way for our community to be represented and engaged with our political system through her idea of automatic voter registration by helping nearly 7 million unregistered citizens become registered to vote through the California's new Motor Voter Act. She also supported working families through AB 480, the Diaper Affordability Act, which made California the first state in the nation to subsidize diapers for parents in need. In addition to these landmark bills, she has passed critical bills to protect the jobs of grocery workers, fight the misclassification of employees as independent contractors, create the first workplace bullying training requirement in the nation, limited excessive CEO compensation in the utility industry, protected immigrant communities from legal service fraud, and mandated and even co-authored the nation's toughest rules to close the gender pay gap. Assemblywoman Gonzalez continues to show us how important it is to support the most vulnerable and underserved members of our community, while also utilizing our platform to change the narratives around women and our ability to affect change. I'm honored and so excited to welcome Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez into this space.
Thank you, Angelica. That was a beautiful rewrite of my bio, and so I might take it from you. You did good. As she was reading it, I was thinking a little bit about all of you and why I'm here and why I do the things I do. So I'm sure some of you have the same or similar experience that I did. I was raised by a single mom. And in fact, when I was elected, I was a single mom, which there really weren't many single moms. There's one other in the legislature, but I was the only one who had young children. And so I think I didn't think when I got elected, one of the things I promised was that I was going to really be a champion for things that affect single working moms. I saw it, I experienced it, I knew that this was a group of individuals or a group of women who for so long, are struggling to get by and don't have a true voice. I since got married, but I still have my commitment, obviously, to single moms. And I think that that's why I'm working in this space again today. And that's for paid family leave. So there have been a lot of paid family leave bills, and you might have heard of them in the past. That we've done things like extend the amount of time people can take off. We make sure that as many employees as possible, no matter the size of who they work for, can take that time off. California was one of the first states to actually initiate paid family leave. In fact, I think it was the first. And that means you're able to take time off, like if you have a baby or if you are taking care of a loved one. But paid is the essential part. What a lot of people don't know is every worker pays into that fund. Every single worker pays into the fund for paid family leave. So it's not paid for by the company. It's paid for by actual workers. It's like 1% that's taken out of your paycheck, and it goes to SDI or paid family leave, the fund. And so that's great. For a long time, we were proud of ourselves, because if you want to take the 8 weeks off, you get to use that fund, and it pays you 60% of your salary up to a certain amount, 60%. Well, that's great. But what we started realizing is, in particular, low-wage women were not taking advantage of paid family leave. And you ask, well, why is that? Well, we know that 60% of your salary, if you're making minimum wage or you're even married to somebody else who's making very low wages, you can't give up 40% of your salary, especially at a time when you just had a baby and things are more expensive. So even though low-wage women are paying into this fund, they disproportionately don't actually access it. And so that seems unfair. So who accesses it? Well, a lot of companies use the government fund and supplement it. So you have a lot of people like Apple and Google and Gap who get to take full family leave completely paid for at a range that was much higher than you can imagine, because they just put more money into it. So we said, there's something going wrong here, because it is just as important, if not more important, that a single mom or low income family is able to stay home with their children, because they often don't have access to high quality, low cost childcare. And that bonding experience is just as important, obviously, for kids that are born to single moms or born into poverty. So what we're trying to do with AB 123 is ensure that we raise up that percentage. The scary thing is, actually, if we don't pass something this year, it goes down to 55% of one's salary. So we have to pass something. We're asking that it get raised to 90% of your salary. 90%, because of the differences in how you pay taxes under paid family leave, is basically full income replacement for our lowest wage workers. And don't forget, this isn't paid for by employers. It's paid for by the workers themselves. So we're looking at some other funding sources, like, for example, women and men stop paying after $120,000 of income. So people who make like $1 million pay the same as somebody that makes $120,000. And so we're like, I think that maybe everybody can pay on their entire income. That'll be a way to put more money into the fund and would allow low-income women to utilize it more. So, and it's not just women, men can use it too. I tend to look through the lens of that which I experienced, and that's having been a single mom and having been raised by a single mom. So I really am focused on in particular vulnerable women in their workforce, but single moms in particular. So that's what AB 123 is. And it's important if we want this ability, because all these workers pay into it, the same workers that can't access it. So it's just fair to allow folks to be able to utilize the same benefit that they're paying into. So that's my hope. I'm glad you guys are lobbying on it. Do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I would like to share. my work does not pay minimum wage. Ignite does not pay minimum wage. Let me begin with that. But even then, I could not have, and I'm in grad school, I'm a single mom. I could not afford to take only 60% of my pay. And that was exactly why I had to come back to work right after that. Right after I finished using up my vacation days, I had to come back to work. And I know I'm not the only one. A lot of families go through very similar thing, and we're not even making minimum wage, or we're way above minimum wage, and even then it's not a living wage. 60% is not a living wage. So no, thank you for being a champion for this. My only question is, I remember last year when you introduced this bill, it was 100%, and then now it became 90%. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that part?
So when we introduced it last year, it was 100%. We knew we couldn't get 100%, but we started at 100%. And because we knew we were going to have to negotiate down some. And so I was like, why would we start lower than 100%? Right? Well, intellectually, I'm trying to be more honest about it this year. I really would like to get to 90%. We have to hold on to what we have. So we're going to have to pass something. 90%, and this is the intellectual honesty, because you don't pay taxes at the same rate as you would if you were working, 90% will provide the same amount for the individual of take-home pay. So last year was more like, okay, we're in it, we're going to negotiate. And this year I'm like, okay, this is the truth. And like, we're not playing games anymore. All right. Like I'm not up for playing around. 90% would allow people to continue at the lifestyle, not even at the lifestyle, because any of you who have had children or no, it's so expensive. It's the most expensive time of your life. And so you're not at the same lifestyle, but you can pay the rent and you can pay for food. And then if you need to access other resources, they're there for things like diapers or WIC. So yeah, we're honest, we're pushing. I'm ready for a fight. It may be a multi-year fight, but we're ready because we've got to pass something this year. If not, like I said, it falls back to 55%. We can't allow that to happen. And we've got to have an honest discussion about contributions. Men and women who make over $120,000, $130,000 a year can continue to pay that 1%. What happens is basically, if you're making a lot of money, there are two things that you stop paying on when you reach that threshold, right about that amount. It's both Social Security and paid family leave. Well, it doesn't make sense that you just stop paying in. So in April-ish, if you're a high income earner, your wages go up even more because they're not taking these funds out of your paycheck. Can't do anything about Social Security. That's a federal issue, but we can do something about paid family leave and disability, the fund that and the money that funds that.
And if I may, I just wanted to chime in and say, hi, good to see you. It's also an issue of equity, because while if that 60%, women still don't make the same as men. And I always like to bring up same gender, like me and my wife, we really only have that potential of $1.20 together, and then take 60% of that. I've been a single mom several times. And so I know, and I wasn't making fair wages. So it's not just about making sure we have enough money, but the equity that's included in this. So I want to push it about equity, and how we can support you in any way. I'd love to know how we can advocate. And my question is, I say all that to say, how much support have you received in the assembly in support of this?
So we have received support as in votes. Like it seems, because we're not asking yet the employers to pay. So the employers don't oppose it, which means that's easier to get through. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of my colleagues see the world. I think that ultimately we're going to have to ask the employers to pay some, and then I think it'll switch. But right now it doesn't ask the employers to do that. And I'm glad you picked up on pay equity, which is an issue. And in fact, when women drop out of the workforce, because maybe they had child, it becomes a bigger issue when they return, because sometimes they miss out on step increases or increases in salary, or that would happen while they're gone. And we have to remember, in California, California has made great strides on pay equity. In fact, we have made more strides on pushing up women to men than any other state. We're number one if you look at our overall numbers, right? That's great. Oh, don't get too happy though. Hold on. That's white women. So it includes white women. Once you pull out African-American women in California make about 60 cents on the dollar of their white male counterpart. Pull out Latinas, good Lord, 44 cents, 42 cents, I think is this year's on compared to the white male counterpart. In fact, 20% of our population is Latina, and that percentage, that 42%, 42 cents, 44 cents, depending on the study, that is the lowest in the nation. So while people went forward throughout the nation, Latinas in California actually went backwards after the last recession. So we have to recognize that there's a special problem. Latinas are overwhelmingly in our service sector. They're taking care of our kids, washing our laundry at the hotel, washing our laundry at a laundry facility, janitorial work. So that service sector, those service sector jobs are not paying what they should, but we can't just blame it on that, because Latina surgeons, they went to school, they became a doctor, and then on top of that became a surgeon in California, make 44 cents on the dollar of their white male counterpart surgeon. So there is something else going on specifically. It could be our family choices. Yes, that could have it, but it shouldn't have an effect on it. It could be a number of ways we're seeing the communities we tend to work in. So I'm telling you, there's a lot of work for us to do, a lot of solidarity, all of us as women, and know that as we make these changes, and that's the same thing with paid family leave, we made a change and that's great, but it can't just affect high wealth women or men or high wealth individuals. We've got to make sure these policies that sound so great, pay equity and paid family leave, that we're not leaving behind my community and your community. And that's what it's really about. And nobody is going to point that out except us, because it's too attractive to say, look at all this stuff we've done, isn't that great? No, I don't mean to be the skunk in the garden party, but hold up, that's not happening in my community, and we need to dive down and see why and change that. So thank you. You're all part of that. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take one more question. And in the meantime, I'll just put this out there. How can we help you pass this bill? How can we help you advocate for this bill?
I would say basically any member you're talking to, also ask them about this. It's paid family leave. They get nervous when they say paid family leave, say it's increasing the income replacement. Yeah, we had a big fight last year about who it applies to. So this year is about increasing the income replacement, which means women and men who have paid into it, who are lower wage, will actually be able to access it. That's all. And then just push. I need the yeses, and then we'll tell them how we're paying for it.
Yes. And someone asked about social media specifically, if we could use social media to help advocate for that bill.
Always. And if you, all right, and I have a bunch of other really good ones, I'm not going to press them on you, but this is my Twitter and Instagram, I think. And on Facebook, you can find me with my husband's name attached. But I do post a lot. There's a lot of good content that you can take and share. Just a warning, I curse and I don't care. Like, I say curse words on Twitter. I get a lot of shit for it, but like, I'm a real person. So if that offends you, don't follow me. But if that doesn't offend you and you want to get some stuff done and really advocate, so we'll be doing 123. We always post about diaper need, about menstrual product need. There's a lot in criminal justice, but mainly workplace issues. And we have a project called the Unseen Latinas that we're working on as well, to make sure those numbers about what's happening in the in regard to Latinas is known.
Awesome. Thank you. And do we have any questions? Nope. Going once, going twice. You can come off mute.
Comment.
All right.
In the chat is, if you could email us a list of all your bills, because we work with so many young women in California with so many different issue areas. I'm sure they can advocate for so many of your different bills. We're here to support.
Yeah, I love it. I have a great bill takes on Amazon. I have a bunch of wage theft bills. You know that companies steal wages from workers and they don't go to jail, but if that same worker stole something from their employer, they would. I mean, the way we deal with big corporations that are literally stealing from individuals is just horrible. But we will send it all. I see Shibangi, my chief of staff, is in the chat giving her information as well. So thank you guys, go do good work, and thank you for what you're doing.
Question, if you have a second.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if we still have time, but we still have time for one more question.
Quick.
Oh, okay. Just was wondering, like, why it's so important to have young women or women like us, right, in leadership position? Why is it important to have us up there?
Well, number one, like I just heard, you all have a story, right? You have a story. I just heard one. I hope I hope Jocelyn tells that story a lot, because we traditionally have not been in positions of power, right? When I look at women in general, women from diverse backgrounds, and we have not been encouraged, even when we have been in power, to tell our stories, and our priorities from our given perspective. And so you women are leading the way for the next generation. There's some of us who made it where we are, and there are a lot of words that are used to describe us because they're not used to us being strong women of color in particular, who are like, this is what I believe. You are the next generation who are going to carry that through, and people will quit using the word like bitch to describe you because they're going to get used to it. So I think it's really important for you to use your voice, to tell your story, to demand people listen to you. We will not allow us not to be heard anymore. Those generations are gone. We have the privilege of having our voices, and so use them. So it's not only important, but it's a responsibility that you have to use your voice, to use your story, to tell the story of your mothers and your grandmothers, and to make sure that they're heard. All right, I gotta go. I love you guys.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
for joining us. Whew, I am so fired up that like I'm like, can I like I wish we were in person because I have so much energy in me right now. But with that, actually I should probably stand and do some stretching. That was just straight fire. I follow her on Twitter, so I've seen her tweet, but this was my first time actually hearing her speak. And I am just so fired up. This is great. Like and yes, you should definitely follow her on social media. It's amazing, like the work that she does. With that, I want to go back to the bill on menstrual equity real quick. And we have Amanda here, who is from CASC, which stands for California Association of Student Councils. Right. Okay. CASC. Yes. So Amanda, she and CASC, they have been instrumental. They have been leading the work on menstrual equity. They were actually the ones behind, they're the force behind Assemblywoman Garcia's bill on it's AB 367 on menstrual equity. So I want to give this chance to give credit where it's due, and also to have Amanda speak a little bit about how that idea came about, and also encourage everyone here to if you see something, if you see an issue in your community and you feel passionate about it, to take action, right? Like, it's not, all these legislators, we have how many of them now? Over 100 in total in the state, 80 assembly members, right? And so they don't know everything. The reality is they don't have all the bill ideas. And also remember, they are there to represent us. So if you have an issue that you're really passionate about, if you see an injustice, if you see something in your community and you have a solution, because nobody knows your community like you do. That's the thing. Nobody knows your street. Nobody knows your neighbors. Nobody knows your community like you do. So when you see an issue and you probably have the solution, bring that solution to your representative, to your assembly members, to your state senator. So with that, I do want to pass it on to Amanda to talk a little bit more about how that idea came about and how now it's a bill. Amanda, I'll let you take over. And if y'all have any questions for Amanda, feel free to pop it in the chat box as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This event is so special and so important, and I'm super happy to be a part of it. My name is Amanda Safi. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a period equity activist. I have been working on the Period Project in San Mateo County to provide free period products in 2 different high schools to students and really everyone all across the county. The first part of the project would provide free period products and distribute them during the pandemic, and anyone can access them. The second part of the project would install free period product dispensers in the girls and gender neutral bathrooms in 2 different high schools. That part is being implemented in fall of 2021, but it's super exciting because Congresswoman Jackie Spear and County Supervisor Carol Groom are both supporting it and funding it. And there's a lot of support all across the county for it. And it's a really exciting and historic project because I've had so many conversations with students and friends and peers about how they would have to miss school and miss class time and leave school early or miss sports practice because they didn't have access to these products. And Assembly Bill 367 attempts to address that inequity as well. It's an extension of AB 10, which only required a certain part of schools or a certain number of schools in California to provide free period products in the girls and gender neutral bathrooms, whereas AB 367 extends it to the entire state and also to public facilities as well. So super, super exciting work. And, you know, advocating for menstrual equity is so, so, so important because we menstruators have been taught to feel ashamed of our periods, right? Like the first words that come to mind when we think about what we were taught are disgusting, gross, ew, nasty. And like I can recall so many instances, more than I can count, where I felt my heart begin to race or my cheeks begin to flush when I would ask a friend for a pad or a tampon. Or even my own parents to purchase period products for me, which I know is stupid, but like that is the result of the stigma. And the consequence of it is that it silences us. Like it silences our voices so that we don't talk about periods in public, let alone advocate for period products in schools and homeless shelters and public facilities. So talking about menstrual equity and advocating for it is on its own revolutionary, and it's so important. And like it's not just a gender issue too, it's a race issue, it's an LGBTQ issue, right? Because not all menstruators are women, not all women menstruate. It's a class issue, it's an education issue, which is what a big focus of the Period Project is and what AB 367 is. Because when menstruating students don't have access to these products, they have to miss school, they have to miss sports practice, they have to leave school early, sometimes not even come to school entirely, right? And some schools do provide period products for free in the health office, but that access is incredibly limited. Like the fact that schools force these students to walk to an entirely separate building to access products with the relatively same purpose as toilet paper, like that is inherently inequitable. So advocating for AB 367 and for menstrual equity in schools and public spaces sends a message to menstruators and everyone else that their bodies matter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Amanda, thank you for that. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for all that you do when it comes to menstrual equity and also specifically on AB 367. And I know you work on so many other things as well, like you mentioned with Congresswoman Jackie Spear and all that. So, you know, just if you could leave like a word of encouragement for other young women, if they see, you know, like how would they, like if they have an issue that they really care about, how should they go about advocating for those issues? Like do they just go to their representatives, or like, well, what can they do?
That's a good question. I would say first, try to know everything that you can about your issue before you go and talk to your representative, because chances are like they're gonna push back. And so you want to be prepared. You want to like have all your facts, you want to have your testimonials, before going to them. And especially those testimonials, right? Like those personal stories are so important and effective at talking with people and at convincing them that the issue that you're advocating for is important, right? And I would say just like, if you care about an issue, go for it. Because if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And like the way that I think about it sometimes is no one else is advocating for it here in my area, in my city, in my county. And a lot of people are really stressed and they're really worried and no one else is doing anything about it. And so in some regard, they are depending on you, right? Like people are counting on your advocacy work. And so just go all in and go for it because you have nothing to lose.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's give Amanda a round of applause. Thank you. And with that, I will, let me share screen. So for the next hour or so, we will be advocating for those two bills. And in addition to that, we do have two bills that we feel strongly about, and those are related to voting rights. And I'll share a little bit about them. It's so one of the bills, let me pull up the bill numbers. Of course, my internet has to be loading. So the other two bills that we'll be advocating for, it's AB 53, which is from Assembly Member Avon Lowe, which would make Election Day a holiday, with only the general election day, a state holiday in California. And then the other one, it's AB 37, which would make every election a vote by mail election. Every single voter will be like, how many of you voted at the last election? I hope everyone, but if it's okay if you did not. But as you may recall, at last election in November of 2020, every single registered voter received a vote by mail ballot in their mailbox. So the goal for this bill, AB 37, which is to basically replicate what we did in November of 2020, but for all upcoming elections. And as we all know, because all registered voter received a ballot in their mail, for the first time ever, we saw a really high voter turnout across the state. And some cities even had up to 90% of voter turnout, which was unheard of. So, we all know that these policies will help encourage people to turn out to vote, and especially for marginalized communities, working class families who could not take the day off to vote. It's very common. I've heard it, I've seen it back when I was a student at college. I know a lot of my peers could not take the day off to be at the polling place because that would mean they will be missing classes, they will be missing work. And that's a luxury that I know a lot of people do not have. So with that, and you can find more information about the bills on our website. I will share that with you all. I'll put it in the chat box for everyone. And just click on California. That's where you'll find all the information. And in the meantime, well, I could use a stretch. I don't know about you all, but let's take a quick stretch. If you're wearing pants, you can stand up. If you're not, probably not a good idea. But take a quick stretch before we go into the next session. Oh. Yeah, my back is really hurting from all the sitting. With that, let me share a screen. That actually felt much better. Oh. Okay, present, share screen. Let me, if I could find, okay. So we'll go into breakout rooms. Again, the leader, for those rooms here. So group 1, you have Shay. Group 2, you have Cecilia. Group 3, you have Angelica. And group 4, you have Tulia leading the group. And when we go into breakout rooms, they will explain a little bit more about what's happening and who you'll be meeting with. And also just get to know your peers, just to get to know, who's in your breakout room. That's the one thing that I miss about in-person event is the networking aspect of it, and we don't get that virtually. So I'll send you all into randomized breakout rooms, and I'll have your group leaders take over from there. And with that, let me stop sharing. And I will send you all into breakout rooms. Open all rooms. Admit. Okay, see y'all in 5 minutes. Let's give it 5 minutes. Why those bills matters to you, and share that with the staffers. And yeah, any questions before we go in? How are we all feeling? Are we feeling ready, excited, nervous? I've never tried this before. How are we feeling? A little bit of everything, not quite sure. We'll find out. Ready? Okay, I love it, Cecilia. I love it. It's first time. Yeah, I know. And it's probably the first time for everyone to be meeting via Zoom, because I'm sure some of you might have done this in person, but not necessarily via Zoom. So yeah, no, definitely first time for most of us, if not every single one of us. So with that, I will send you all into breakout rooms, and we have our staffers here joining us. We have Maha from Assembly member Eloise Reyes. We have, let me see, Kiera from Assembly member Jose Medina. And we have, is it Chelsea from Assembly member Alex Lee. So thank you all for joining us, for taking the time to meet with us. And I'm gonna send you all, hi Kiera. Hi. With that, I'm gonna send you all into breakout rooms where you'll meet in a group of 6, and we'll be talking about those bills. And I'll see y'all in 20 minutes. Please, yeah, it should not be longer than 20 minutes. So I'll see y'all in 20 minutes. So join, okay. Hi. Oh, let me send you, which group were you in earlier? Right. How do I pronounce your name? Right? Raya?
Raya. Yeah, I was with Angelica.
Angelica. Okay, let me send you right back there. Okay, there you go. See you in a bit. Okay. I can finally breathe. Oh,
It's going great.
I just wanted to say that was my first time like lobbying. So thank you to my group for sticking with me through that as I was leading it.
oh yes.
You did an incredible job. Thank you
you
so much for giving us some really great insight and preparing us with all of those. I mean, there were 4 specific, things that we can talk about. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah. Anyone else? What was the experience like in other groups? Yes, I see that. Who's, I think, is it Raya? You had your hand up. Yep.
I had such a great time hearing everyone's stories, because that just shows how much we need these paths. And everybody has had similar stories, similar struggles. So that just goes to show how much we need to work together and amplify our voices to make sure that these things are passed and to make sure that our stories are heard.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yep. No, our voices, that's, I would always tell people that's what makes the difference, is that if we amplify our voices, and there's always power in numbers. So when we get together and we can amplify each other's voices and amplify each other's stories, that's how we get things done. And it might take some time, it might take months, it might take years, but you know what? We are there for each other to along the way, and to help amplify each other's voices. So, thank you. And with that, we will be hearing from Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo in a few minutes. In the meantime, there's also another way you can take action, which is through our website. let me send the link in the chat box. So on our website, you can take action by, and I'll show it. You know what? I'll share screen. I was like, this would be much easier. Okay, here. So once you get to our website here, you click on California. We're here, California. So there's these 4 bills where you could take actions. You could send emails, you could use social media. I know someone mentioned social media earlier, where you can use Twitter and Facebook to advocate for issues that you care about. And you can also phone bank. So there's script that's ready for you. And we'll, just for instance, we'll just try this. And you put in your address and it will auto-populate your representative. And for mine, I live in Eastville, so my state senator is Richard Roth, and my assembly member is Sabrina Cervantes. There's an automated email ready for you, but you can also, and I encourage everyone to add your personalized story here as to why this bill matters to you, and then just click send. And then right here, that's tweet ready for you. You could just tweet it, Facebook as well, and then also phone banking. And the number is right there for you. So you could do that for all 4 bills. And in the meantime, I see that Assemblywoman has joined us, and I don't want to keep her waiting. So I'll pass it on to Tulia, who will introduce the Assemblywoman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tulia, and I'm introducing Assembly Member Wendy Carrillo, who was elected to serve in the California State Assembly in 2017. She represents the 51st Assembly District in East Los Angeles. She has been an advocate for education, immigration reform, environmental justice, healthcare for all, job creation, and innovation. In the State Assembly, she serves on the Appropriations, Rules, Labor, Health, and Utilities, and Energy Committees. Assemblywoman Carrillo immigrated to the United States as a young child during El Salvador's Civil War and is a first-generation American with Salvadoran and Mexican heritage, and we're so happy to hear her speak. If you want to talk, Assembly.
My turn? Okay. Hi, hello. Good morning. It's so great to be with you. Oh, did I lose you all? My screen just went dark.
No, you're here. You're here.
Okay, I can't see anybody anymore. Okay. It's so great to be with you. I love doing anything with the women of Ignite and ensure that we're actually working on building a pipeline of women and women of color who are interested in public service, both in office as well as the support that's needed. Right. I want to give a shout out to my ledge director who's also on this call. Her name is Jessica. She is young and talented and makes me look good because of her dedication to our office and ultimately to the people that we serve. So I think you wanted to all talk about a couple of bills that are on your priority list.
So actually, they just met with quite a few staffers to advocate for those 4 bills, and and we're wrapping up the event now. But that they were advocating for those 4 bills. And we heard from Assemblywoman Christina Garcia and also Lorena Gonzalez, and we thought it would be great to hear from you to wrap up the event and also to just talk about the importance of advocacy and using our voices and amplifying our voices on issues that we care about.
Oh, great. So you're done with the bills. So this is just like a conversation. Okay, great. I'm always happy to share. I think one of the most important lessons in this space is that we now have a seat at the table, right? So the question then becomes, what do you do with it? What do you do to best advocate a position while you're there? How do you stand up to powers? How do you best advocate? How do you sometimes even get out of your own way in terms of feeling that you are worthy, that you are powerful, that you are knowledgeable, that you belong? There's a lot of sometimes issues on not feeling like you're prepared enough. And I think as women, we do the extra to try to even get to the mediocrity that exists everywhere else. Someone shared with me when I first got elected they shared with me, and I'll share this with you. And it made me laugh at the time, but I get it. They said, you got to walk into a room with the confidence of a mediocre white man. And I was like, that's very direct, you know, but I get it in terms of like, what does that mean when we have to compete in rooms where sometimes we have not been in, right? And I think it's a great space. Jessica and I often talk about how even in issues like energy, you know, and climate change and infrastructure, it's such a conversation that's surrounded by men, because it's not necessarily as infrastructure and building is not necessarily a space that women have played in, but it's certainly a space that we can play in that will determine the future of the state and the future of this country. And so how do you just, you know, own that and own that role in any space that you're in? I'll also share with you one of my favorite quotes. This is it's not a verbatim, but it's more like interpretation. It's a letter it's a love letter that was written by John Adams to his wife Abigail, right when they were in the process of funding the Revolutionary War. So have you guys heard this quote? Have you ladies heard this quote? Okay, so he wrote this love letter from France to his wife in the colonies. And he starts off by saying, you know, the gardens in Versailles are beautiful. I could write about them all day and talk to you about them all day, but I got work to do. It's like, I must go study politics and war so that our sons may have the liberty to study mathematics and science, so that their children have the freedom to study art and music. I get chills, right? That is the essence and the power of this nation, of our country that we get to build. And that every generation that comes after us, regardless of where you're from or what language you speak, or even what your legal status may be, is that we have an opportunity to set the tone for the next generation. My parents are hardworking, immigrant, working class, essential workers who raised 5 daughters in East Los Angeles. And, you know, I get to now represent the community that I grew up in. And I think about that quote, and I think of the hard work that my parents had to do to raise 5 daughters and to allow us the freedom, right, to study what we studied. And so that the next generation that comes after can have the freedoms to study what they want to study and create, you know, the intergenerational success that happens within our communities. And so, you know, I hope that that's a little bit inspiring in your role and where you fit in and where you want to fit in, so that you can also continue, you know, creating a legacy for yourself and for your families and the communities that you come from. And ultimately, like, it's all connected. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lovely quote. This is recorded. Maybe I should have stated that in the beginning, but I'm gonna replay this again, and I might actually I might have Ignite cut out like just that section and post that. But thank you for that. Wow, I can't, I don't even know how to follow up with that. But with that, I'll open up for questions. If anyone has any questions for the Assemblywoman, or even Jessica. Hi, Jessica. It's been a while since I last saw you, but it's great to have you here. And if anyone has any question for the Assemblywoman, this is your chance to ask away. And yes, Cecilia, Cecilia was sharing how she was so moved by your story, Assembly member. Well,
I have just one question. Hi, it's Shay Franco-Clausen. Nice to see you. I just want, because we're in some different times and women face so many different barriers, especially being in the Assembly or the Senate. Can you just describe how you manage that as you're working with majority men and when you're advocating for bills that just make common sense? You know, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we have a Democratic majority in the legislature, both in the Assembly and the Senate, and also with a Democratic governor. But sometimes it's very challenging to pass certain things out of our house and out of the legislature into the governor's desk. what's interesting is sometimes you, in this work, you make allies and friends with people that you would traditionally would not necessarily agree with values wise. I'll give you an example. We ran a bill that there was a law that sunsetted. So the law ended and so we were trying to rework it. And this piece of legislation had not moved forward for like 2 years or a year or so, something like that. So we picked it up and ran it. And it was a piece of legislation that stated that if a parent is incarcerated, right, that if they are incarcerated for more than 90 days, that parent does not have the opportunity to earn a living and pay child support, right? That's, you're incarcerated, you're in prison, you're making 49 cents on the hour, minus the deductions. So you're making nothing. So if you're in jail or in prison for more than 90 days, there's absolutely no way that you can pay your child support. And what happens is that when parents leave the prison system and they try to reunite with their families and they try to get a job and they try to like get back into their own space and to live their lives, their licenses are suspended because of the missed child support payments. They can't see their kids. They can't be reunited with their families. Like, it doesn't make any sense that you would expect someone who's incarcerated to pay child support. So this, to me, was very basic. It also alleviates all of the